Hello, my name is Julie, and today I am going to be doing a tier list of all of the adult fantasy and sci-fi series that I have read from. Believe it or not, that's a lot. Over the course of many, many years, when's like the first time I read like a proper adult series? Like probably like middle of high school is when I would have started reading some of these. So like it's been a long time. So we have a lot to get through, and I'm not going to be able to go into detail about a lot of these books just because there are simply so many of them. I have tried to randomize a little bit the series that I have here. I have also decided to eliminate series that are purely fantasy romance, and I made like an exception for like a couple series that I really had something to say about. But for the most part, I just needed to cut something out because I think I have 73 series that I have read from at least once. So without further ado, let's just look at our tiers. So we have a lot of tiers here because I'm like this, but the bottom couple are like, we're reserving judgment. The bottom tier is, if they ever finish it, I'll rate it. You know exactly what this is for. The next one is also reserving judgment, but in like more of a positive way, is we'll wait and see. These are series that I did enjoy the first book, but we only have one book out so far. I don't feel comfortable quite rating it among the books that I enjoyed yet, so we are holding off. Then we have Who? And that's books that I low-key don't remember very well. And unfortunately, some less popular series are definitely gonna fit into this category. Then we have Y'all Are Lying. And that is obviously for books that are hyped up and I just don't get it. I don't like this series. There are actively things that I don't like about it that I know are gonna get people in a tizzy about. So if you disagree with me, we can chat, I don't mind. Please be respectful in the comments. Then we have Not For Me, Fam. This is just a book that just does not align with my taste, but I get it being for other people. It's Alright is a book that I think is good. It just didn't blow me out of the water. We Were Rooting For You is something very specific, but something that happens to me a lot, where I find that the first book in the series was by far the best book in the series, and then we never really got anything living up to that, or maybe it just peaked early. Then we have Really Solid. This is a series that the entire way through the series, it was really good. And then we have finally Some Good Fucking Food. Those are series that I thought were stellar and stayed stellar the entire way through. So without further ado, let's just get going. The first one I have here is the Roots of Chaos series, which is Priory of the Orange Tree. This was originally supposed to be a fantasy standalone, and then she decided that it needed to have more books. And I'm gonna say We Were Rooting For You. I have not enjoyed the other two books as much as I enjoyed book one. Book two is Reheated Nachos, and the novella shouldn't have existed. It didn't need to. It does not make sense for this to be a separate novella at all. Then we have the Hierarchy series, which is what I'm known for. I think I'm gonna put this in Really Solid for right now because we only have 2 data points. So we don't know if this is going to go into We're Rooting For You or finally Some Good Fucking Food, because Will of the Many is one of my favorite books of all time. However, The Strength of the Few I did not think was quite as successful. It's still really good. It is a really impressive work. However, I don't think it's as well-rounded of a book. Then we have the one that everyone and their mom's gonna get mad at, sorry, everyone and their dad is gonna get mad at me for, and that's The Wheel of Time. So I DNF'd The Wheel of Time after 7 books because I don't feel like these characters actually change over the course of these 1,000-page books. They still feel very immature. I really hate the way that Robert Jordan really believes that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. I think the idea of there being only one power is bullshit, considering men and women are treated so differently. And like people are like, oh, but the fantasy's so good. I actually can't pay attention to that because of the other things that I'm really mad about with this series. And I've said that, oh, I'll return to it another time. I'm not going to. And so unfortunately, this is going in Y'all Are Lying and everyone's gonna be mad at me. Oops. Then we have A Wizard of Earthsea. I read the first book in this series. This is a classic fantasy series that is like one of the first ones to do the magic school thing, but it was only like a chapter long. This is really short. It feels old. I've read other things by Le Guin that I like more, and this one just like did not leave a lasting impression with me, so I am going to be leaving it in Who. Then we have the Expanse series, which all of the books that I have shown here are the most recent book that I have interacted with in the series, so you can see where I am. So I'm like less than halfway through the Expanse, and I'm gonna say books 1 and 2 are fantastic. So far, 3 and 4 were lackluster. So right now, we're going into We Were Rooting For You, but that's subject to change. And then we've got Dungeon Crawler Carl, everybody's darling right now. It's in one of the top 2 tiers right now. I think right now, especially because I'm like earlier on in the series and there's like, I'm not even halfway through what is out right now, I'm gonna put this in really solid with room for it to go up. I really, really love book 1. I didn't love book 2 or 3 as much as I loved book 1. Book 3 is the least favorite book that everyone has in the series, so the most recent time I had with this book was like the least I hope I'm going to like this series, and hopefully we can get it up into that top tier. Then we have The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. This is my only time that I've read Joe Abercrombie. I was just waiting for him to publish something outside of his other universe, just so I could get a taste without the commitment. And this is confirmed that it is going to be a series. We've got a sequel, like tentative date. And I'm gonna say, we'll wait and see. I enjoyed this. I think that this could be like a really solid 4-star series for me, but we're reserving judgment. Then we have the She Who Became the Sun duology. I don't remember. The Radiant Emperor is the name of the series by Shelley Parker Chan. This is one of my favorite duologies of all time. Very few duologies like really do it for me. And I am actually, oops, this is gonna happen every time. I am gonna put this in Finally Some Good Fucking Food. I think that the first and second books do feel different, which is a thing that happens in like every duology, and I kind of hate that. But like the intensity stayed the same even when our focus shifted. It very clearly was the story that the author wanted to tell. I think I gave both of them 4.5 stars. I think it's a shame that it has been lost in the conversation of fantasy. Oh, Dark Tower. I have to put this in We'll Wait and See. I read the first book so long ago. It's been like, I think 8 years, and I never continued because I just own so much other Stephen King. So I've decided that I'm going to put this on hold to come back to it. Book 1 is kind of a nothing burger, so I would put this in Who, maybe, or It's All Right, but I know that I like have not gotten a good sample size of what this series is yet, and I hope years from now when I've gotten through some of my Stephen King backlog to really give this a shot. Then we have Mistborn Era 2. Let's do Mistborn Era 1 and 2. Well, I'm just gonna push this up here. Whoop. Mistborn Era 1 for me is Finally Some Good Fucking Food. Absolutely. This is one of the first adult fantasy series that I feel like I would have completed, or like one of the first I was introduced to, and I love Brandon Sanderson. I love the feeling of this series. There's just like the atmosphere and everything, and they're characters that stay with me for a while afterwards. And I'm going to say for Mistborn Era 2, I'm going to be giving it really solid. I have just read Bands of Mourning like a week ago, and unfortunately I was spoiled for the massive spoiler of this series by myself and then later by Brandon Sanderson in another one of his works, which I thought was really not fun. But I think this series is fun. I didn't love book 2, but I think that like it just doesn't have the same je ne sais quoi that the original series has, in my opinion, but I'm still like having a blast. So it balances out. Then we have the Empire of the Wolf series by Richard Swan. The first book, I was so convinced that this was gonna be like a favorite series of all time. I gave it like a 4.5. It was one of my favorite fantasy books that I read that year. And then I read book 2 and I was like, literally, what is this? I am putting this in We Were Rooting For You. I did not like book 2. And book 3 has a lower average rating than book 2 does, and I'm probably going to DNF it because I really just did not like the way that like we're shifting the relationship between the characters, and then like the magic no longer felt like I had a good grasp on it anymore, or I just didn't care. It felt very different from book 1, and I didn't love that. Then we have Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This series, you either are so deeply obsessed with this series or it's so whatever, and there's kind of not a lot of in between. And for me, I'm gonna put this in It's I. Maybe you can move down to Not For Me, fam. It was a 3-ish for me. I never fully got off the ground with how I felt about it. There were elements that I liked about the trickster fairies, but honestly, if I've thought about it, I don't think I've ever really loved a book. It had to do with like traditional European fairies, folklore-ish stuff. And I actually really hated the ending of this first book. Then we have the Tainted Cup series, which it used to be called Shadow of the Leviathan and has since been changed to Anna and Din, which I do think is interesting. And I'm going to put this in really solid for now. We'll see if this changes because I'm hoping to read book 3, which just came out. Book 1, I would have said it's all right. But book 2, I actually thought that the mystery was really well done in a way that I didn't love book 1. It's almost like the opposite of We Were Rooting for You, but so rarely do I think a sequel is actually better than the original, and I simply think book 2 is better than book 1. I'm hoping that this is finally a Robert Jackson Bennett series that I can get into because, as we're gonna see, I don't have a great batting average with him. Then we have the Legends and Lattes series. I am going to put this in We Were Rooting for You. Oh, I'm not actually going to rank them within the tiers. We have too many. I'm just going to put them on the end. I actually read Bookshops and Bone Dust first, and then I read Legends and Lattes just because of book club stuff going on. But Legends and Lattes really has something special about it. It feels like a management video game versus Bookshops and Bone Dust is okay, but it just doesn't get off the ground and feel fleshed out like the first book does. And then Brigands and Bread Knives could have been in Who. Like, I was reading that book and I'm like, what is the point of this? And I honestly, did Bookshops and Bone Dust need to happen either? We have Lies of Locke Lamora. I have only read book 1. I have book 2 just off camera right here. And I am hoping to read it next month. I'm reserving judgment, but like this, I really loved it. I gave book 1 a 4.5. I just am in no rush to continue on with the series because he probably won't finish it. And then maybe I'll just have to move it down to the tier of, if you ever fucking finish it, I'll rate it. Speaking of, I could put Game of Thrones there, but I actually don't care if George R.R. Martin finishes it anymore. I still love Game of Thrones. I still think it's worth a read. I think it's a great work of fantasy if you can stomach it. I think the characters are really well realized. I think it's brutal. And like, I absolutely was obsessed with these books when I was reading them. And honestly, it's been so long that like, I'm not deeply invested in ever getting the ending to this story because to me, it's basically over. So I'll say finally some good fucking food and you can fight me about that. Then we have the Spell Shop series, which I do consider to be a fantasy series, not to be defensive or anything, but like Legends and Lattes has the same amount of romance that the Spell Shop does, but because of marketing, one of them is called fantasy romance. Do I want to say really solid? Yeah, I'm gonna say really solid. I just read book 3, which just came out. Spell Shop is my favorite cozy fantasy of all time. Enchanted Greenhouse I thought was good. Sea of Charms I did think was better than book 2. So I'm going to say really solid for now. I don't think book 4 has the potential to be a favorite, but like Spell Shop can continue to be like one of my favorite books. Then we have, I know I said I wasn't going to do fantasy romance at all, but I have to talk about my personal favorite fantasy romance series, the Bridge Kingdom series, and it is going into S tier for me. I do think that there is a dip in quality in the middle, but the ending of this series absolutely brought it back to something that is fantastic. I have gotten so many of my guy friends to read this series and they've all loved it. I love the characters in this so much. I love the just like political machinations, as this is a fantasy series that doesn't actually have magic in it. It's just a political fantasy. Super fascinating and engaging as fuck. Then we have Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. I think this is a novella series. I read it a really, really long time ago for the booktubathon, if you can believe that. I really struggled to follow this book. I can barely tell you what it's about now, except that it's an urban fantasy that has to do with different indigenous gods being in the real world. I just remember reading this book and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So this is definitely going in Who for me. Then we have one of the least read series on this list, and that is the 5 Penalties series, which starts with The Helm of Midnight. I loved book 1 and it was one of my favorite books that I read that year. And then the sequels do not live up to the original. In fact, I think that the first book should have been a standalone. There was like one concept that was used in book 1, and that was what book 1 was about. And then the rest of the fantasy world building was like a backdrop. And then the rest of the series had to do with the backdrop. And like, we never really care about following our main characters from book 1 again. And book 3, the things that were good about it were things that were entirely new to the series. The things that were left over were not great. So this is a very, very strong we were rooting for you. I highly recommend you read the first book and just the first book because it is a great work of fantasy horror. Then we have what's going to end up being an unpopular opinion. That is the Farseer trilogy. I have only read the first one. I do intend on reading further in this series. I'm going to try out the Mad Ship series because I know everyone loves that one, but I've only read the first 3. Book 1 was just okay for me. Book 2 was great, and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm so glad that like we finally got over the hump of like, we needed to give the backstory of this character. And then Assassin's Quest is, in my opinion, one of the worst finales I've ever read. I could not believe it was written by a woman because of the way that the women are treated in this book particularly. I thought it was repetitive as anything. It's 700 pages for no reason and nothing happens until the end. I don't care that you've built out this world and he needs to get from point A to point B. If everything he does between point A and point B is the exact same and we change all of these characters so they're no longer like the people that we knew, it was like, what was the point? And then it's just like, oh, everything's solved right at the end. I'm gonna say on average, it's going into it's all right. Then we have the Themis Files sci-fi series. I wanted to love this series so badly, and this is one of those series that I just kind of finished out of obligation. I wish I had listened to the audiobooks the whole way through because I listened to the last one. It was really good. The production is great on it, but this is just one of those sci-fis that just didn't click with me. Like the characters don't feel very lived in, and it's more like about the grand ideas, but I did like the grand ideas enough to continue on in this series. So I'm just gonna say not for me, fam, because like I think that there are people who would be drooling over this series. It just wasn't 100% for me. Then we have the Gideon the Ninth series. I'd say I had like a little bit of a rocky path with this series. I was so mad about the end of book 1 because I was not thinking straight. And then book 2 I thought was so confusing, and it's truly possibly the most confusing book I've ever read in my life, and you really have to put in the work, and me listening to the audiobook of this like really hurt me. But then like I was able to like refresh myself and everything and being like, wait, no, I do really love these characters in the story. And I was able to read None of the Ninth and really enjoy it. So I think I was the problem with book 2. I absolutely like agree with it. And I'd say objectively, it's probably the best book in the series. This is a really solid series because like if I read it again, I know 100%, I'd be giving it at least 4 stars across the board. The David Bad trilogy, this was really popular back in the day. I read all of them. I really enjoyed them. I actually probably should have read the books closer together because I do feel like I lost a little bit of love between them. But like, I really enjoyed Nari, our main character, being a healer. I thought that the setting that we were in was cool. And I actually prefer this. I don't even know. I actually don't have the Amina al-Sarafi series on here. I prefer this to Amina al-Sarafi. I am going to be putting that into really solid. And Amina al-Sarafi, which is not here right now, I'd say I'd probably put into It's All Right. I didn't love it enough to continue. I just didn't feel like it still had the same feeling as the other series. Then we have The Archive of the Forgotten by A.J. Hackwith. The second book in the series was one of the first e-arcs I was ever given on NetGalley because I was like interested in book 1. I don't know why I did this to myself. So I had to like check out book 1 to then read book 2. And I ended up not liking book 1, and I still read book 2 for review anyway. So I just did not like it. This is not really a y'all are lying because it's not super popular, but I'm going to put it there anyway because I actively disliked a lot about this series. Then we have the Imperium series, which starts with Furyborn. This is like borderline YA adult, like the characters are fairly young. They're like 18, 19, but there is like explicit stuff in it. So I consider it adult. I was shocked by how much I loved book 1 in this series. And then as the series went on, I just liked each of them less as our main character is changing. And like the fact that the main character changes is like part of the synopsis of the book. That's like one of these people is supposed to be the queen that like rips the world apart or whatever. Like one of them is supposed to be an evil queen. But like I really just did not like the development of a lot of our characters in this series, and it just never was as interesting as it was in book 1 in my opinion. So we're putting this and We Were Rooting for You. Then we have Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. Now, this is not a popular one. This was the series that made me interested in Chloe Gong in the first place. She was teasing this, so I read some of her other stuff and then came back here. I did not like Immortal Longings. Hated the relationship in this. I did not get behind basically anything that happened in this book. I'm gonna say not for me, fam, and I think most people would stay with me. It's not, people aren't lying about it because I actually don't hear people liking it, versus I have seen people like this series before. Then we have the Carl's duology. I really love this series. I wonder if I read it now, if I would still feel the same way about it, but I thought that the way that it was talking about fame and the internet, it feels very like a rival in the way that we're doing First Contact in the first book, but then it's also goofy silly in a really creative way that somehow wasn't annoying. I feel like this is a series that has fallen by the wayside that people aren't talking about anymore. So I want to say really solid. I thought that the second book is way weirdo compared to the first book. But yeah, ooh, we've got some spicy ones coming up. Then we have the Broken Earth trilogy. This is probably the singular most awarded sci-fi fantasy series of the last, 15 years or something like that. It's the only trilogy to have won all of the Hugos. The third book won all 3 of the major fantasy awards. And I personally never super got along with it. The end of book 1, when you get to the plot twist, was the only time I was ever really invested in the book. And I get why people like it. It's just not for me, and I just don't think N.K. Jemisin's writing style is for me. So I'm gonna put this in not for me, fam, and everyone can forgive me. Is that okay? Then we have the Between Earth and Sky series, which I'm debating whether I'm going to finish out this year or not. Either way, it is going to be dealt with. So Black Sun, I thought was too short, but what we did get, I really enjoyed it, and I was so invested in our characters. And then book 2 comes along, and I'm why have we completely abandoned our other characters and made them sit on their hands? From fans of Black Sun, who that's one of their favorite fantasy books of all time, I've heard them not enjoy the sequels. So few people have read the last book in the series, and the last book in the series is so long, and that's been my problem with the series. So I'm maybe it could balance out, but it's also been so long that I'm But I'm gonna put this in We Were Rooting for You, because I just don't think that this is going to reach the level of enjoyment that I had for book 1. Then we have the Stormlight Archives. Do I need to discuss this? I loved it all the way through. I do think Wind and Truth is the worst book in the series, and it's not a competition. And I know we have more to go, and I'm really excited to, spend this time between lengths of series to get myself even more well-versed in this series, hopefully, and then we can return to it later. Oh, we've got a double. We've got a back-to-back. We've got the Green Bone Saga, urban fantasy, kind of set in the 80s and rival gangs and stuff. This is one of the few series I have ever read that I can say with full confidence that every single book gets better. Literally, the first book was a 4-ish for me. Jade Legacy is such a freaking accomplishment. Even though Jade Ward is probably my personal favorite, I have to put this in, hold on, finally some good fucking food. I feel like I recommend it to anyone who reads any sort of fantasy, but I could also recommend it to people who don't love fantasy, because the fantasy, it's not a huge part of it. Then we have the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks, which is a really fun, underrated epic fantasy series where the light spectrum is the magic system. Some of these characters are characters that I really love and think about and root for. I think there's so many cool plot twists, and if you like the Brandon Sanderson magic systems, this is something you could get into. It really gets engineering and scientific in some portions. People were disappointed with the last book, and I personally wasn't. My personal least favorite was book 4. I do think that the fat-phobic comments in this series are really annoying. I wonder if that's something that is really personal to Brent Weeks, that he doesn't realize that he's doing it. That's kind of how it came across to me. I do have to say that as a caveat for the series all the time, because it's one of the first things that comes to mind for me. Otherwise, I do think it is a really solid series. Then we have the Book of the Ancestor series by Mark Lawrence, starting with Red's sister. Assassin nun school, right? On a frozen planet. Book 1 was really fun. I read it with my book club. People really enjoyed it, and some people immediately continued on with the sequels, and I don't think people love them as much. I personally did not get along with the sequels at all. I like found them difficult to get through in a way that I didn't find the first book. And like the last book is the shortest of the series, if that gives you any idea of how much he drops the ball. I think that like the very conclusion of the series is cool, but that whole, the plot of the last book lets it down so much that I kind of also would recommend, if you want to read it, maybe just read the first book. Then we have the Witcher series, which is a weird series that starts out with 2 different short story collections and then it gets into the novels, but the novels still kind of feel like short story collections. I told myself that I would get through the first 2 short stories and then get to the novel and see what I thought. And so many people told me of all the series I was in the middle of that was the one I was gonna DNF most likely, and I absolutely am. I don't get along with Andrei Sapkowski's writing. The first novel was such a nothing burger. Like, it just felt like nothing was happening, and there were some uncomfortable conversations that, like, I just wasn't having a good time while reading it. I'd rather consume other Witcher content, except I'm not really motivated to it as much, especially because, like, kind of the show went off the rails. The video games are a little bit above, like, my playing level, and I'm just like, I don't need to deal with it anymore, actually. So I'm gonna say y'all are lying. For the most part. Thought the first short story collection was okay, and just never thought it was okay again. Then we have the Calculating Stars series. I have only read book 1. This series won so many of the like Hugo Nebula and Locus Awards. Mary Robinette Kowal is just like a really loved author in that sphere. And I personally, while like the science and history of this book was super interesting, like the lasting impression is how like bothered I was by like the like writing style and stuff. There were like a lot of things that I was like cringing about. Seriously, the number one thing I think of when I think of this series is how her and her husband end so many scenes by like, she's about to like hook up with her husband, right? The 2 of them start making like rocketry horny jokes. And I'm like, ew, get me out of here. I do think the idea of this is so cool, and I would rather just read another series that does the same idea, honestly. I want to say it's a not for me. Then we have The Raven Scholar, which is a series that only has 1 book out. It was one of my favorite books of last year, but I do have to reserve judgment for now. I think it could be a favorite series, so hopefully it does not drop the ball. We won't know until next year. Then we have Dune. I'm not a Dune fan. Personally, I love Denis Villeneuve, and like I think his movies are beautiful, but like I read that book and I watched the movie, and I've never been so confused in a movie where I already read the source material, right? Like I just don't think old-timey sci-fi clicks with me. These are characters that feel so separate from me as a person that I'm just like, I don't get along with it. I would rather read a book that is about like the work that he put into Dune rather than actually reading Dune, if that makes sense, because of like all of the like ecology and stuff that he like did to make Dune a setting. I'm gonna say not for me. Then we have the 3 Body Problems series. I have only read book 1, and that was a very long time ago, and I just went a long time between books. But honestly, again, one of those series that is just like all ideas, and you are not supposed to care about the characters. And I can read that for a standalone. I cannot read that for a series. If I don't have anybody to latch onto or you to make me emotionally care about something, I'm just not going to continue on with your series. So personally, it's not for me, fam. Then we have The Atlas 6 by Olive Blake. Olive Blake is an author who has a ton of clout. Her books are in all these online spaces and people are always talking about them, but like all of them have like really low average ratings. I read The Atlas 6 and I was so like enraptured by it while I was reading it. Like it definitely is like one of those really vibey books that you're like, oh my God, this is so good. And then the second you put it down, you're like, what the fuck did I just read? And like it completely left my mind the second I closed the book. After that, the sequels got really poor ratings. The last book in the series, I believe, has under a 3.0. So I can't speak to those. But just for that first book, I'm going to say it's all right. I had a good time, but I'm never going to think about it again. Then we have the Bear and the Nightingale series. This is one of the earliest books that I read on this list. The Bear and the Nightingale is like one of my favorite fantasy books. I love the atmosphere and like the small feel of it, which is kind of how I felt about the first book in the Empire of the Wolf series as well. That like it just feels so isolated and cold, and like the like mystery or like whatever that we're trying to figure out. And then the next 2 books in the series decide to blow up the world. This happens with both of these series that I'm talking about. And I did not like how it did that. The Justice of Kings, like I wanted that to happen. This one I didn't, and I don't like how it continued on. I think I gave book 2 a 4 and book 3 a 3. So this is safely going in, we were rooting for you. Then we have the Tierling series, starting with the Queen of the Tierling. This is such an underrated series. Nobody talks about it anymore. It is one of like the most creative sci-fi fantasy series I've ever read. You start out in this kingdom setting and you think it's going to be one thing, and then like slowly the book starts showing you more of its true colors and you're like, oh, it's way more complicated than that. The ideas of this world have really stuck with me, and I think that this is also a series that I really want to recommend for someone who wants to read a fantasy series that has 0 romance in it. This is kind of a case of like a 5, a 4.5, and a 4 in the trilogy, so I am going to put this in really solid. Then we have the Darker Shade of Magic series. I will be honest with you, this series is so old that like I don't remember it super well, but like Darker Shade of Magic was a 5-star and the other 2 were very strong 4s. I really enjoy V.E. Schwab on the whole. It's a very distinctive world that like I can imagine very well, and I like the characters a lot. I'd be curious what I'd think if I read it again, but I'm going to put this in very solid. Sorry, really solid. I made this list and I can't even come up with it. So this is what we're at. How many do we have left? I think we might be halfway through. We have the Southern Reach series, starting with Annihilation. What the fuck is going on? I'm gonna say y'all are lying because, like, I love sci-fi horror. I don't know that I've read much that is this specific flavor. This definitely would be, like, one of the first books of this type that I ever read, but, like, I just did not get it. I've kind of heard people say that you either like the book or the movie. Years after reading this, somebody put on the movie and I actually enjoyed it. So maybe that's what's up. I just thought that this book was like way too esoteric, like not concrete enough. Like I appreciate a book in which you're not really sure what's real, but like this went like too far into the weird direction without having enough grounding. And like, again, this is one of those ones where we don't care about the characters very much. So like, why would I continue on? Then we have the Singing Hills cycle. Bunch of novellas. It's a companion series. After reading 4 of the books in the series, I've decided to DNF. I've read a good amount of Niveau for never really having a book that I've enjoyed by them. And I'm just like, why do I keep picking up books by this author? I'd say The Empress of Salt and Fortune I did enjoy, even if like I don't have a good memory of it. But then that happened with like all of the books in this series. It feels so short that like I don't have that much of an impression of it afterwards. I never felt like I had enough to sink my teeth into, besides the fact that the writing style is pretty. So I'm gonna say that this is a not for me, fam. I'm gonna put it in It's All Right, but I have DNF'd it, which I have other like DNFs in there. That's fine. Then we have The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winter. This is like a very fighting-based fantasy. This is like very, like we're just fighting montage. And that is how everybody, regardless of how they feel about it, talks about this book. And personally, that did not work enough for me. There were small elements of this book that I really was interested in and enjoyed, that I was hoping that this book would focus on more, and it just decided to shirk that for other things. And also, like, it's been so long since book 2 came out, I have no idea if he'll ever finish it. I personally didn't enjoy this one enough to move on, and we'll see that with like another series on here that like, if it is an action-only book, I'm not personally going to be interested in continuing on for the most part. This one, like, I actually do think that this is like higher quality than some of these other like fighting forward books. It didn't do enough for me. Then we have a book that I set aside a tier for, The Name of the Wind. If he ever fucking finishes it, I'll rate it. Because I've only read 1 book. And I bought the next book immediately. That was 8 years ago. And I've just been waiting to read book 2 until book 3 comes out. So it's just never gonna happen. Then we have a novella series that I'm probably one of the only people who's read this. Fireborn Blade. This is like a really weird, it's a novella series, but like we take so much time like telling stories of this world instead of the actual plot and like main characters of the book. And I also don't think book 1 and book 2 have very much to do with each other, so much so that it doesn't make sense that this is just a duology. Like, I don't get it. I'm gonna put this in Who, because like I am not going to remember this series very much. Then we have the Murderbot series. This is mostly a novella series. It like had its first novel, like the 7th book in the series. I read the first 4, and the only one that I truly enjoyed was book 2. I thought that one was fun and funny, and like the other 3 follow like such a strict formula that I just did not enjoy. I didn't get a lot out of. I don't personally find Murderbot to be that fun of a character to follow. I just think it's kind of repetitive. Not for me. I would like to say, it's gonna sound like I'm being really negative, but you know what? We are a little bit top heavy right now. There's a lot of series that I like, but like, it's really hard to do good sequels, in my opinion. And also, like, there's going to be more series that I did not like and didn't continue on with than series that I have like finished out and caught up on. Just how math works. Then we have, I don't know what the series is called, but it starts with the Stardust Thief. That was another like action-y forward book that I read with my book club, and I really think that it did sacrifice character for action, but it was a book that it was like easy enough to get through that I am gonna put it in it's all right. Like it was okay, but I actually, I've heard people who love book 1 did not love the sequel, but I didn't feel the need to continue on with it. Then we have These Burning Stars in the Kingdom trilogy, which is a space opera-y thing. This is one of those books that like on paper I could enjoy, but like the writing style just did not click with my brain. And so it felt like I was slogging through, even though like objectively I enjoyed what was happening. I'm gonna put it in It's All Right. I do think there's such an audience for it and other people would enjoy it and it's underrated and everything, but I just don't think that the writing style was for me. Then we have Upon a Burning Throne. If I'm not wrong, this series is inspired by the Mahabharata, and this was so long and so slow and just not a lot going on. And I just, like, the only thing I, like, kind of remember is that it's, like, 2 brothers and one of them's blind. And it's, like, one of the only times I've read a book from the point of view of someone who's blind, which I thought was interesting. But that's, like, kind of the only thing that I have left about that in my memory. So it's going in Who. Then we have the Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology. Sometimes people market it as YA, sometimes people do it as adult, sometimes people say it's fantasy romance, some people say it's fantasy. I'm putting it as adult fantasy and you can sue me. This is possibly the #1 We Were Rooting For You. I have never had a book series, I don't think, go from a 5-star to a 2-star in only one book before. I hated the second book, Heart of the Sun Warrior. I think you should read Daughter of the Moon Goddess by itself. It could have stood on its own. I don't know why we needed a second book. I'm gonna go cry about it now. Oh my god, okay, we need to go faster. Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is another We Were Rooting For You. Book 1 is fantastic. It's like magical coding. It had such a cool world and I was interested in the characters. Then it took so long to get to book 2. I read it and I am just not clicking with it at all. Both sequels have a lower rating than the one before it, so I did not feel the need to try to read the last book in the series. We have Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I don't know why Leigh Bardugo's YA and her adult feel so deeply different. I've never really been a Leigh Bardugo girl. Like, the only one that I would say I enjoyed would be like Six of Crows. And Six of Crows, like, I read at a really bad time in my life, so I didn't want to continue on. I liked whatever the Shadow and Bone series was, and then I gave up on it. I didn't like book 2. So, like, Leigh Bardugo has never been my author. I read it, and I was like, oh, that was good. And then I was like, wait, never mind. I actually didn't like that much. I don't know why I thought I enjoyed this. And it wasn't like people talking about it online. I just, like, no longer had fond memories of the book. And I was like, no, all I had left were things that I didn't like about it in my memory. So I'm gonna say y'all are lying, and I'm really upset that like book 2 won the Goodreads Choice Awards, and probably the fucking third one's gonna win again. Then we have the Poppy War series, which I actually like famously did not like the first book, but this is another one of those series that I genuinely do think it improves with every single book. I think The Burning God is the best book in the series. I think it's good. I think if I reread this series that I would like it more. I'm gonna put it in really solid, more on an objective basis than a subjective basis, because I actually did quite like the sequels, but the first one should, you know, have it bumped down a little bit. City We Became, N.K. Jemisin again. I don't think anybody really enjoyed the series anyway. Me and her writing just sit on each other like oil on water, and I just can't get it into my brain. I really love the idea of like the different New York boroughs forming some sort of force. If you didn't like this but like that idea, I think you should watch Dimension 20's Unsleeping City. Is it their most underrated series? I think so. Just the first one. I don't like season 2, actually. Lord of the Rings, everyone get your pitchforks ready. We're putting it in really solid. It's not my personal favorite thing in the world. My boyfriend's gonna hate me for this. I love the movies. I think the movies like bring a lot of warmth to the text. Personally, really love the movies, and I actually love them more than the books. That's a very popular opinion. Okay, I put this in here specifically to put this in this fucking tier. Everyone on the planet is lying about One Dark Window. I hated it from the beginning. I don't understand. Like, this world does not feel fleshed out at all. Like, I do not get this man. The whole time I was just thinking about it, I'm like, this is just low quality. Like, the whole time. I really don't understand why this is like such a well-loved series. A really underrated one that I want to talk about is the Magic of the Lost series. We're putting this in really solid. Every single one of them, I rated them like a 4.25. This is like one of the like straight up most consistent series I've ever read. Every single book in that series I rated the exact same, and I felt the same way about. Even when the plot changes what it's focusing on, I still felt the same way. I do think there were some elements of like the political plot that I wasn't 100% getting all of it, but like when I tell you I was down bad for these characters, absolutely obsessed, and I thought that the messages around colonialism are great. Then we have the Tease duology. Ooh, I'm gonna put it in really solid. Book 1 is a favorite of mine. I think it's so fun. I think I can recommend it to people who don't even like sci-fi because it's so action-packed and fun. And then book 2, it's just one of those duologies where like book 2 feels so different from book 1, and like we're shifting who the point of views are, and I'm like, why are we doing this? And I kind of don't think that book 1 and book 2 are related enough. If it were to continue on and be more companion-y, like, and building out, like, this universe, sure. I'd be interested in reading more from this series, but, like, I just don't think book 2 is as good as book 1. Then we have the Vagrant Gods series. I'm gonna put this in It's All Right. This is a book series that I did actually end up finishing out, but this is another writing style that just could not click with me, even when I was enjoying the plot, and, like, on paper, I enjoy the characters. I think that this is also talking about colonialism. The magic is so cool, where it's like devotion is how things get their power. There are these gods that feel like legendary Pokemon. It's cool, and I want to advertise it for whoever the audience of this book is, because I know I'm not the perfect audience for it, but it's still good. Ooh, this is fun. Bone Season, y'all are fucking lying. Y'all are so lying about this. I read Bone Season back in high school, I want to say. I could not stand like the plot of this book. I could not get behind whatever is going on. I don't think even the revised edition could revive this for me. I just really did not enjoy where the plot of this book went, particularly where it pertains to the love interest of this book. It's pretty probable that maybe that does not continue to be the love interest of this book, but like I was just kind of appalled while reading this. The plot of this book had so little to do with the synopsis. Then we have Bone Shard Daughter. I'm gonna put this in Y'all Are Lying again, kinda. Yeah, I think I am. Me and 2 of my friends, we all read this at the same time for a buddy read because it was one of the only books that all 3 of us owned. And every single one of us was like, well, that was nothing. It just didn't give anything. I think I actually have heard that the sequels of this aren't as good again, so I definitely wasn't going to continue on. The beginning started out good, and then it just didn't feel like it went anywhere. Then we have the Jasmine Throne, the Burnt Empire? I can't remember the name of this series. I'm going to put this in It's All Right. I did not continue on with this series. I didn't feel strongly enough about it, but I do think it is good, and I get other people being into it. It kind of felt a little bit too focused on the relationship for me, and just like the other parts of it didn't feel built out enough. The word economy was not good. That's how I'll put that. City of Stairs, another Robert Jackson Bennett. I'm gonna go Who. This is another one. He loves a fantasy mystery, and I like couldn't follow this. Other than like the gods have abandoned humanity and there's these different cities and there's a city, there's stairs everywhere. Like, I could barely remember what happened in this book. The sun has completely gone away, and that sucks. Then we have Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. This is another Y'all Are Lying. I really disliked book one, which surprised me because I was such a fan of Illuminae, which is co-written by Jay Kristoff. And this is like a dark fantasy. Like, Jay Kristoff's solo stuff is so different from his collaborative stuff with Amy Kaufman. But like, I really did not like the way this book talked about women. And it was just like a dark fantasy that like, I just didn't get along with. Like, I didn't really care about the plot of it. And I was just kind of like, I felt gross and like, I didn't want to get through it. Like, it was such a chore to get through this book. Mask of Mirrors is going in Who again. I know this is Venetian inspired. I listened to the audiobook of this and like the whole time I was just kind of like, why are we doing this? I just never got invested in anything that was happening. I don't know if it stretched my credulity a lot or just like it just didn't give me enough reason to care, but it was like pretending like I should care. It's like some of these series don't want you to, like, you don't need to care, like it's not trying to make you care. This was pretending as if I had cared. The Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers. You know what? I guess Monk and Robot could be in here. That would be really solid as well. But I'm just going to put Becky Chambers as a whole is really solid to me. I did enjoy book one the most of the three that I've read. Book 2 and 3 each have their own merits, and this is a companion series, so they're a little bit more licensed for things to be different and everything, and I just really appreciate Becky Chambers' outlook on the world and what she has to say about like what it means to be human and everything. 3 series left. I've only read the first 2 books in the Ending Fire series, but it's so really solid right now. The last book is not very popular, so I doubt that I'm going to push it up there to the top. Really loved book 1. I think it's so underrated. Book 2 was pretty good. We're holding out hope for more stuff, but I love these characters so much in a way that like a lot of adult fantasy, like I'm not as invested in those characters. And I just think it's like a fun take on stuff that we've seen before. Then we have The Hunger of the Gods with the Bloodsworn Saga series. And I'm gonna go not for me, fam. This is yet another just like fighting forward book where literally you just flip the pages and it's like fighting. And it's like, you haven't given me a reason to care about the fighting, actually. You can't just say something important is happening. You have to actually build up stakes. You've just diluted my ability to care by the amount of fighting and the amount of people who are fighting, in my opinion. Last series, we have Red Rising. I have to put this in reserve judgment. Because I only read book 1 and like there's so much else of this series. Like I can't put it in really solid because I've only read the 1. I read the first book so long ago and then didn't continue on for literally no reason. For no reason, I just didn't get around to it. I really enjoyed it and just didn't continue. And now I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do about it. And now I'm like, well, I would have to restart if I were to continue, just like the Dark Tower did. So at the end, here is my tier list. At the bottom, Patrick Rothfuss. Do something. Books that I had to reserve judgment on. Books that I said, who? Y'all are lying. Not for me. It's all right. We were rooting for you. Really Solid. I'm so happy that Really Solid is the biggest tier here. And then finally some good fucking food. Some of my favorite fantasy series of all time. I'm really happy with that section right there. If you would like to play along with this list, I have made this a public list. You can add your own books and remove mine as well if you want to just use this tier. I'll have that link down below. And thank you so much for watching. Please let me know, what did I get right or wrong in your opinion, but be kind about it, be respectful. I like all of my opinions here. It's all for fun. Everybody has different tastes. And if I said something was bad and you think it's good, that's cool. And I'm so happy for you. I wanted to love it. After all that, if you'd like to find me anywhere, you can find me at the links in the description. And if you'd like to keep watching my videos, I would love it if you'd stick around. You can hit subscribe. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.